All right, good evening, everybody. If I can have your attention just for a minute. Well, it's going to be like 45 minutes, but I need you for 1 minute if everyone can listen up. Thank you. I hope you all had a fantastic day. I know you heard this quite a few times today, but delegate attendees, please don't forget to fill out your feedback form. Super important for us to make sure that we keep getting better and improving our events. I'm happy to announce we're still on track for completing our mission of executed meetings through day 1. So as long as we continue the streak, we'll be able to make the donation to the charity of the raffle winner's choice. So that's exciting. All right, listen, as you begin eating, I'm so excited to introduce you all to tonight's superstar here at Millennium at the Biltmore. So he's the former global CIO at P&G Mars. It's Vittorio Cretella. So please join me in welcoming Vittorio to the stage.
Good evening. Hope you are having a good time. Bon appetit. I'll try to do my best to keep it that way, right? I'm Vittorio Cretella, former CIO of Mars and Procter & Gamble, and happily retired since July 1st. And these days, thank you. These days what I like doing is keep learning, listening, sometimes, like tonight, sharing some thoughts, but most of the time learning and watching what's happening because it's a really exciting time. So the theme of tonight is how to succeed with AI in the enterprise. So I'm not going to talk about the best way of training LLMs or the best way of putting together agentic RAGs, but more about how do you use AI for business value. And I must tell you, I've been around for 40 years in business. I started in '85, always in IT, and 90% of my career has been in consumer packaged goods. And that gave me a bit the privilege to live through quite a few transformational waves enabled by technology, starting with the arrival of personal computers in the enterprise. And some of us in the audience may remember that generated a lot of business processes relying on spreadsheets. After that, we had ERP, which was top of the list. Again, I had the benefit of leading, when I was at Mars, the first global implementation of SAP, and I can tell you I still had hair before that. Then we had the internet, e-commerce, we had mobile, we had the cloud. For CPG, that was all important because got the consumer closer to the manufacturer. So there was more visibility of the job to be done, more data points to understand the consumers. And then, around 2010, big data, data is the new oil. You remember that motto? And finally, in the last, 5 to 10 years, the explosion of AI, first with machine learning, and second with generative AI. And I do believe, and that's why I keep watching things and enjoying that this wave will have a significant impact on business, possibly way more than the previous ones. However, for all of these, what boils down to is kind of a common recipe. And basically, 3 ingredients. A clear business case, grounded in business value, the right talent and skills, so people, and a sound technology architecture. So I'll try to go a bit more in detail across each of these and sharing some of the experience I had with those. So starting with the business case, and what's interesting today, AI is very fashionable. And if a business is not doing some AI, is doomed to fail, to the point that you can draw a correlation for the number of times AI, the word AI, is mentioned in quarterly earnings and the stock value. Well, I can tell you, at Procter & Gamble, my CEO didn't allow that. And he was very clear. He said, we are not going to do AI for the sake of AI. But AI has to be very grounded in the business benefit of revenue, growth, and productivity. And we had use cases pervasively across all the area of the business, both fueling growth and productivity. So starting from the way we develop the products and making sure that you can augment with AI the consumer experience. You know, some of you may be familiar with Oral IO, the electronic toothbrush, and the mobile app that goes with it, telling you how to make sure that you cover all area in your mouth. Or the other thing is for Pampers, which is baby diapers, helping parents to choose the exact right size of the diaper thanks to a mobile app. So AI becoming a factor of augmentation of the consumer experience. And obviously new concept creation, we'll talk about that. The combination of generative AI and traditional machine learning helping with creation of new products. Productivity, you know, alternative formulation, or translating some of the product specs when you launch the product in new markets. And then the consumer engagement part, using models to address and minimize consumer churn. You know, understanding when a consumer is going to leave your platform and then send out, you know, specific signals, vouchers, things to retain them. Productivity in media, making sure that you are efficient in your media spend and at the same time increasing reach by sending the right message with the right content on the right channel with the right frequency. And those are tens and tens of millions of dollars of saving with increased reach. In the go-to-market and distribution, working with the retailers, using machine learning to understand what is the right assortment, what is the assortment that works at a granular level, by store and by geographical areas, as well as the so-called programmatic shelf, which shelf layout fuels the biggest uplift, and showing retailers the correlation between the shelf layout and the sales. And obviously for CPG, I couldn't not mention promotions and using algorithm to predict which promotion work best and getting efficiency out of that huge amount of spend. And last but not least, business operations. Business operations, not only the back office, where as you may imagine, especially now with generative AI and assistance, you can drive productivity and efficiency, but also on the shop floor. So that's something that at P&G we started about 4 years ago, using, for instance, machine learning and visual recognition to do quality checking online, real time. So instead of sampling products out of the line, using visual and machine learning to make sure that you have a real-time pulse on the quality. Now, all these use cases are obviously very much grounded in productivity and growth. What's interesting is, with the arrival of Gen AI, interestingly, working on business cases became, on one end, I would say easier, because many of the stakeholders can now relate to AI, and they are user of the different chat GPT of this world. But at the same time, a bit more challenging, because people think that you can solve it as easily, and you can use LLMs to predict sales, which is not going to work. And so the analogy that I've been using is the two sides of the brain, with the left side being analytics, where machine learning with predictive and training on historical data work best, and on the right side, the creative with generative AI. And interestingly, there are use cases which are at the crossroad of both. And I'll give you an example. Optimizing organic search, using machine learning to understand which keywords brings your search capability at the top, and then use generative AI to create content based on those keywords. So that's one example we're building AI systems that are a combination of machine learning and Gen AI. Now, interestingly, this is the benefits, but when you have a use case, to make it worth, you need to demonstrate, to track the benefits and measure them. And make sure that those metrics are related to business. When you speak with data scientists and AI engineer, they are more worried about the specific machine learning performance metrics, which really don't tell a lot to business stakeholders. And what I found in my experience, if there is one area where we would benefit for more development, is the area of enabling and automating experiments. Anything that takes those metrics and using A/B testing, pre-post comparisons, demonstrates the business case early on before you scale it. And I must say, we are still exploring in this space. It's not really industrial grade yet. And finally, business stakeholders ownership. And that's extremely important to have in the enterprise, help coach stakeholders who own and can describe the business benefits of AI with their own words. My strategy at the time was, when we presented to the board, to limit my speech to less than 10 minutes. And then I gave the floor to CEOs, to functional officers, to talk about the benefits with their own words. And that is, for me, fundamental, regardless of the audience, where you talk to a board, where you talk to the general employee population, having your stakeholders speak about it with their own words and championing the value is paramount. So that's about the business case. But even if you have a great business case, there is something you have to deal with, which is the human factor. And when I talk about the human factor and talent and skills, I don't only refer to specialized AI competences. The data scientist, the AI engineer, we'll get to that. But first and foremost, the general employee population and AI fluency of the organization sits with each employee getting the familiarity to work with AI, trusting AI. And there we hit some of the roadblocks of building that trust, like cognitive bias. So go tell a sales executive who has been planning promotions with her or his guts during all the career to trust a machine learning engine to recommend the best promotion. Or explainability, that's another roadblock. And it's not easy to explain how an algorithm, especially neural networks, how they work and gain the trust of the stakeholders in it. Very often is a black box. And so what's important there is to invest in upskilling and make sure that by making people more familiar, you get this combination of human skills, curiosity, creativity, with the machine. What we did at P&G, we worked with Harvard Business School, and we had many of our leaders attending the class Competing in the Age of AI. To the point it was so successful, we created a specific version for P&G with HBS. So I thought I had the call out here on the slide, but if you go on HBS and look at Competing in the Age of AI, it's something that definitely helps. And it really doesn't teach people how to code in Python. It's more about how business stakeholders can get familiar with the value that is generated with AI. And finally, the specific AI talent. And here I speak about data scientists and AI engineers. And I would recommend, whatever you do, you insource some of those capabilities. In my experience, I haven't seen one company successful with AI by delegating 100% to third party. You need to have a core, at least, of competencies, a set of skills that are internal. When we talk about data scientists, the way we organized them was to have all of them in a central team so that we could foster best practice and help with career development, because I can tell you, a data scientist, they want to be data scientists. They don't want to be plant managers. But at the same time, we embedded them into each of the business units with assignments. And so they were working side by side with the users on the use cases. So that was the best of both worlds for data scientists. For AI engineering, we had a central team, fantastic engineers, at P&G, hundreds of them are based in Poland, fantastic skills. But their primary objective was not only executing, but creating the platforms to enable the rest of the organization to execute through automation and through tools. So that, for me, was one of the ingredients of our success from a people perspective. And talking about tools, the third leg of the story is about technology architecture and how you automate to scale. Because you know, scaling is paramount. The festival of proof of concept is not going to take anybody far in a Fortune 2000. You need to replicate success. And if you have a successful AI, a proven AI system, you need to make sure that it's used across the different categories, markets. Otherwise, the impact on the top and bottom line ain't going to happen. And so in terms of architecture, there are a few components. The first one, obviously, is data, right? Because AI, machine learning, lives out of the quality and the quantity of the data. And allowing the access to data is key to develop, critical and productive and strong algorithms. And now, investing in a data lake environment, I believe is very important. And what's also helping these days is that the data lake environment is evolving in the lakehouse concept, which allows, in the end, both business analysts and data scientists to work on the data for either descriptive or predictive machine learning purposes. So the consistency across both. And so investing in a data lake, investing in a catalog and data access is very important. The second thing is automation for speed and productivity. So give those data scientists the tools to create those machine learning pipelines, to make sure that they have the templates. And when they do that, basically they create their system in a way that makes it easier to productionize them later. So you don't have to have AI engineering at the end of the chain to fix things, but right at the inception and during the development, thanks to these tools, they are able to create a pipeline and make sure that those systems can be containerized and run well into production. Third thing is risk assessment and safety. Making sure that whatever you use AI for, you don't expose the company to risk. And we did that in two ways. One is to provide the AI developers and the data scientists with a checklist for self-assessment. And second, having a team of risk model officers as second line of defense. And both of these groups and their activity relies on the presence of an AI bill of material. So everything that gives you the data lineage and the metadata of the models, so that you can make sure you can test them for safety, you can test them for compliance against the different regulations that are appearing, first in Europe, state of California, New Jersey is working on it, and possibly we'll see more and more. And again, this AI bill of material is something that you find solution for. Full disclosure, I advise a company that has a great solution in the area. Their name is Cranium, and we see more and more of those type of solution appearing, helping with traceability and with pen testing and red teaming against any possible jailbreaking or interference with the models. The other thing is observability for resilience. When you put this thing into production, we do know machine learning is probabilistic, is not deterministic. A software program is deterministic. You follow the instruction, you get a result. With machine learning, is a living organism, and the reliance on data may make so that over time you have data drift and conflicting results. So plugging observability and making sure that when the models run into production, you have alerts so that teams can intervene and correct is key. So one thing that we did was to bring all of this together in a platform. And we created a so-called AI factory, which basically was the workbench to do all this and follow the development end-to-end of an AI system. From inception, development, data exploration, training, put into production, and running with observability. Now, I assume not company have the same resources that Procter & Gamble has, and therefore they may not be able to build such a system. Again, there are a few companies you want to watch for, and what they can do. One is Clarify, and their value proposition is indeed in this space a workbench for machine learning development. Good, so those were the three. I want to just share a couple of thoughts in the recent space of generative AI and what a CIO is faced with when dealing with generative AI system. The first question is, when you think of LLMs, would you pursue commercial ones or would you work with open source? And the criteria are 3 or 4. The first one is data and the exposure you may have to IP loss or even worse, copyright risks. Now, open source models provide access to the data the LLM is trained with, as opposed to some of the commercial models that they don't. However, with commercial models, you can strike some contractual agreements, and I can tell you, with a big hyperscaler, I spend more time signing the contract with lawyers than with engineers to make sure that those clauses and all the T's were struck and all the I's were dotted. But again, you can protect yourself with clear, but there is sensitivity around your IP and the copyright risk when you create content. The second one is performance. And if you look at the recent benchmark, some of the open source LLMs are getting closer to commercial ones. The only question I have is twofold. On one end, how much performance do you need? And the second is, do open source model have the incentive and the business model to invest to get the level of performance of the commercial ones? The other thing would be functionality. So what you get from commercial LLMs are some features like guardrails that you may not find in open source one. Conversely, with open source, you can customize them, things that you cannot do with commercial one. And last one is, and very important, cost. And there you have to balance the cost of using the API, especially when you have many tokens flowing through it, versus the cost of having the skills and the talent to develop and train an open source one. So those are the considerations. And if you were expecting a clear answer, I don't, but I would suggest you use those perspectives to drive your judgment. And the second topic is retrieval augmented generation. And many companies are already beyond the prompt engineering stage. At P&G, we started with that. We provided templates, so key templates for user to drive their prompting. But soon we found that with RAG, tapping into our proprietary data, we would gain competitive advantage. A company like P&G has decades of consumer insight data, and tapping into those when feeding the LLM, clearly is competitive advantage. But the future, I think, is beyond simple RAG, but more use of agentic RAG. So agents that can drive the retrieval in a way that you can make the most out of the data, and making sure that you have memory of the conversation, that you can have a multi-step approach, access to APIs to use different tools, and access to real-time data. But these two, I think, are two considerations that many CIOs deploying generative AI are faced with. But finally, back to the key takeaways, I think the opportunity is huge, providing we keep those three things in mind. Business value first and foremost, and make sure that that's grounded with stakeholders. Being mindful of the human factor and the need to upskill of the organization and bring talent in-house. And finally, think of the platform and the architecture to scale so that you can replicate success across the whole enterprise. And by doing these three things, we'll see so much value out of AI in the years to come. Thank you. That's all I had to say.
Okay, thank you guys, and thank you to Vittorio, that was amazing. So before our dinner concludes, did want to mention, so the night is young. We will continue the evening after your dessert with some cocktails at the lobby bar. So my directions are a little interesting, but if you go downstairs, you pass the pool, and then you get back into the downstairs over there. The bar will be on your left, but there'll be tons of Millennium staff showing you where the bar is. So don't worry, we'll get you there. And also don't worry about being tired tomorrow, because we will have plenty of coffee. That leads me to my next point. We have a really great breakfast panel discussion around adapting to the rapid change of the AI landscape at 8 a.m., moderated by Howard Holton over at GigaOM. We have an all-star panel that you certainly don't want to miss. So make sure you enjoy tonight, but also enjoy your coffee bright and early so that you join us for the panel session. All right, I will catch you guys at the bar. Thank you.